Hello, I'm going to be talking about coronavirus, the PropTech Flywheel. Mostly I will be referencing the office market, but most of what I have to say is applicable across all asset types. The flywheel will not discriminate. Before we get to the here and now, I'm just going to recap a bit about the state of the market as last year ended. Well, some things were very much the same. Technology wasn't sleeping and Moore's law was cracking on as ever, which is how we got to these numbers. These are the number of transistors on a CPU, a computer central processing unit. So we had 100,000 in 1980, 10 million in 2000, and then just 16 years later, 10 billion. That's exponential growth for you. And what happens with exponential growth? When you get to big numbers, doubling them becomes a big deal. In fact, we have been more than doubling recently. This is the Cerebras WSE GPU, or Graphical Processing Unit, that was announced in late 2019. And this has 1.2 trillion transistors on it. So 100 million to 10 billion in 16 years sounded impressive, but not as impressive as 10 billion to 1.2 trillion in just 3 years. But even that is not as impressive as this. This is the growth in the amount of computational power available to run AI systems. And this has doubled every 3.5 months between 2012 and 2018. So a computer scientist had 300,000 times as much computing power to work with in 2018 than just 6 years earlier. I call this the Trinity of Transformation, where we are seeing huge increases in data and computing power and great advances in algorithm design, especially within deep learning. And this is having great consequences. There is a so what of speed. McKinsey wrote this in 2017. Overall, we estimate that 49% of the activities that people are paid to do in the global economy have the potential to be automated by adapting currently demonstrated technology. And that is now nearly 4 years ago. So we have been moving to an AI everywhere world. Eric Brynjolfsson and Andrew McAfee, both of Harvard, wrote in the Business Review in 2017 that artificial intelligence, especially machine learning, is the most important general purpose technology of our era. Now, the importance of this is in those 3 words, general purpose technology. Most technologies are point solutions that solve one particular problem. But a general purpose technology is one that is pervasive. The internal combustion engine is a general purpose technology. Electricity is a general purpose technology. The internet itself is a general purpose technology. So we can expect to find AI embedded in applications throughout business and across society. And this means AI is set to have a huge impact on real estate because the nature of work is changing. Anything structured, repeatable, or predictable will be automated. That is the 49% of all tasks referenced by McKinsey, which means we need to be thinking, what is it that us humans will be doing? Now, fortunately, there is something missing from structured, repeatable, predictable, and that is creation. We may not be Michelangelo, but for something to be structured, repeatable, or predictable, it needs to be created in the first place. And fortunately for us, machines are not very good at creation. In fact, Picasso had it right. Computers are useless. They can only give you answers. And that is the point of humans. We are here to ask the right questions. So if you think of it like this, anything structured, repeatable, or predictable will be automated. So think of that as old work. But new work is what humans are good at: design, imagination, inspiration, creation, empathy, intuition, innovation, abstract and critical thinking, collaboration, social intelligence, and judgment. That's new work. An office that is designed around old work is, or shortly will be, obsolete. The future-proof office has to be designed for new work. Offices must catalyze human skills. which is why the real estate business is no longer about real estate. The value of real estate rests into what degree it can catalyze human skills. Because ultimately, no business wants an office. They want a productive workforce. And technology has, paradoxically, made this ever more important. It has changed the purpose of the office as not somewhere to do technological things, but as somewhere to be the best humans we can be. Our value, or at least the value of most of us, rests on our human, not our technological skills. Which means Winston Churchill's comment of 1942 has never been as important as it is now. We shape our buildings, and afterwards, our buildings shape us. So that was where we had got to BC, before coronavirus. Now let's look at what has happened AC, after coronavirus. Coronavirus has hijacked the stage. This year's play in real estate was going to be climate change and sustainability, but now it's COVID-19 all the way down. Or so it seems as the world comes to a halt, the streets empty, and we all remain largely at home. In reality, our response to coronavirus will, indeed has to, place sustainability at the core of a flywheel of change that represents the greatest opportunity the real estate industry has seen in decades. To deal with one, we have no choice but to deal with the other. Without hyperbole, we have a moral obligation to not waste a serious crisis. We now have the chance to do things that were not possible before. We have to seize it. The global pandemic is acting like a forcing function in real estate, as across wider society. The future is being compressed. Time is being fast forwarded. And 5 to 10 years change will now take place in the next 12 to 18 months. Has a moment ever felt so Darwinian? It is not the strongest species that survive, not the most intelligent, but the ones most responsive to change. The world has messed up big time, and this time it's serious. What would have been? Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, with over $7 trillion of assets under management, set the tone for the year in January. His annual letter to shareholders was entitled A Fundamental Reshaping of Finance, and has the subheading, Climate Change is driving a profound reassessment of risk, and we anticipate a significant reallocation of capital. He goes on to write about how climate change will impact bonds, whether 30-year mortgages are possible in many areas most at threat from rising sea levels, how insurance may become unobtainable for many, and the impact on inflation and interest rates if the cost of food climbs from drought and flooding. And then he nails his financial thinking to the mast. Investors are increasingly reckoning with these questions and recognizing that climate risk is investment risk. Last year, he wrote, a company cannot achieve long-term profits without embracing purpose and considering the needs of a broad range of stakeholders. Ultimately, purpose is the engine of long-term profitability. Now, this received a great deal of attention and much tub thumping, but frankly, climate risk is investment risk is 100x more powerful. When the man at the helm of a powerhouse like BlackRock says, our investment conviction is that sustainability and climate integrated portfolios can provide better risk-adjusted returns to investors, the writing is on the wall. Demographics is also about to impact on the subject. Demography is destiny. Millennials aren't so young anymore, up to nearly 40, and they are moving into corporate positions of power. Now, while most millennials are X, Y, or Z, comments are trite nonsense, it is true, according to a large Deloitte study, that as a group, the under 40s do put more weight on improving society than generating profit. Most likely they have to live with the consequences. Either way, again, as pointed out by Larry Fink, the world is currently undergoing the largest transfer of wealth in history. $24 trillion from baby boomers to millennials. As wealth shifts and investing preferences change, environmental, social, and governance issues will be increasingly material to corporate valuations. All of which is indisputably means that an industry responsible for 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions and that consumes 40% of the world's energy has not only no choice but to take this very seriously, but is going to be under the most intense scrutiny over the next 10 years. There will be some carrots used, but if the industry does not comprehensively up its game, then very many, very large sticks will also be used. Indeed, these are already being used, with New York City mandating that large buildings above 25,000 square feet, so not even that large, should reduce emissions by 40% by 2030. Not that surprising, perhaps, as what do we expect when the real estate industry is responsible for 66% of greenhouse gases in the city? So the scene is very much set for sustainability to be a key talking point, at least within real estate. When the money is worried about preserving wealth, you can be certain the rest of the industry has no choice but to take note. But taking note does not necessarily mean action. The real estate industry, especially during the good times, is highly skilled at taking note rather than action. So what will be? In evolutionary biology, there is a theory called punctuated equilibrium. This holds that instead of slowly evolving over time, when evolutionary changes occur, they happen rapidly and suddenly. Species split into two distinct species, rather than one species gradually transforming into another. In a less dramatic, but I believe equally transformational way, this is where we are in the world of work and the office. The way things were in February must now be considered history. Everything has changed. However long it takes to get through the current pandemic, we are not going to return to the world as it was. And hard though it may be to believe right now, that is a good thing. We have an opportunity to do things we thought were not possible. Two zeitgeist changing things have occurred. First, we have been forced to realize that being inside in confined spaces with many other people potentially exposes each and every one of us to illness or worse. Our buildings can harm us. Secondly, across the globe, we have been part of the largest behavioral experiment in history. In a matter of days, the knowledge economy went from being 95% office-based to being 95% home-based. And the results of this experiment? With caveats, working from home works. In this example of how being inside can harm us, 9 people in a restaurant caught the coronavirus thanks to the placement of an air conditioning unit. In this well-publicized example from China, we saw how spending hours together in an unventilated space led to dozens of employees catching COVID-19. The workplace acted as a petri dish. Now, we have known about the impact of environmental conditions for a very long time, but largely we've ignored the issue. Today, we no longer can. However, we are lucky in this because whilst we now need to take a close interest in the environment around us for health reasons, it just so happens that we will benefit from the productivity gains and financial returns that follow from working in optimized conditions. Put simply, humans' cognitive ability is maximized by being in spaces that are healthy. It's taken a pandemic to force us to do what we should have been doing anyway. This is a slide from a presentation given by the Shanghai-based but Canadian-led standards company Reset. As you can see, it is a known that cognitive function decreases above certain CO2 levels, and the same with increases in VOCs, volatile organic compounds. Increases in particulate matter 2.5 lead to increased risks of lung cancer and strokes. And there is much more in this vein. Without knowing the quality of the air in any office you go into, you are frankly endangering yourself. Pre-pandemic, that danger might just have been feeling a bit drowsy in a meeting. During a pandemic, it might mean rather more. There have been many surveys done asking people how they are getting on working from home, but Leesman, who have been conducting workplace surveys for over 10 years, probably is the best. By August 2020, they had conducted over 126,000 individual surveys. In their standard surveys, they always ask people whether their workplace enables them to work productively. As you see here, nearly 20% more people say their home office enables them to be productive than their office. Across many variables, the home office wins for private conversations, for business confidential discussions, for thinking and creative thinking, for reading. In each case, the office comes second. The same applies for mobile computing equipment, for Wi-Fi, for remote access to files, and for telephony. Home office wins. Where the office wins is not at all surprising. Spaces to spread out, learning from others, informal social interaction, and of course, hosting visitors, clients, or customers. And again, not surprisingly, offices tend to have better chairs, desks, fixed computers, wired connectivity, and printing capabilities. What is so striking is how easy it would be to update the home office with decent chairs and desks, leaving the office only really of value for collaborative uses. And this is not even a function of age, as so many commentators wrongly assume. In the eyes of employees, the home office beats the office across all age bands. Where the home office fails, and fails badly, is when someone has to work in a non-work specific location, such as a dining table. Productivity drops badly in such circumstances. Within the Leesman data, this applied to circa 25% of people. Given the above, it is therefore no surprise that survey after survey shows that there is a clear desire amongst knowledge workers not to return to the office 5 days a week. Professor Nicholas Bloom of the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research conducted a large survey in May 2020 and found that 25% of people wanted to work remotely full-time and 20% wanted to be in the office full-time. For the rest, a standard bell curve distribution is likely, with most people looking to work in the office 2 or 3 days a week. Who wants what is driven by a few core factors. The longer the commute, the higher the desire for remote becomes. Good public transportation makes a big difference. Age matters. Younger employees are more desirous of buzzy offices, having access to senior colleagues, and for the after-hours social life. Those with children or older, less social types are more bothered about just getting stuff done. Job task and type is critical. How much of someone's job involves collaborative or individually focused work? In each case, they need a space that best enables the work they do. Character also matters. To a large degree, offices are for extroverts. In many instances, offices work far less well for introverts than extroverts. And overall, people work best when they are given what Daniel Pink described as purpose, autonomy, mastery. Having flexibility to work in many different locations goes a long way to providing this. For companies, distributed work also has many advantages. The last 6 months has shown most companies that most of what they do can be done away from the office and made clear what would be best done in an office. So cutting the total amount of space they occupy by 10 to 30% would seem to be relatively easy to do. Savings from smaller HQs could be simply banked, but that would not be wise. Reassigning the savings to better space or local space for employees, and stipends for home office costs would be better. Rethinking real estate needs from end to end would be best. Planning around hub, home, and roam, where employees can make best use of whatever space they need, wherever they are, would be the optimum. Less but better. Less but better. Corporates working with distributed teams also have the potential to benefit from far larger talent pools. There is a huge difference in the availability of talent that not only needs to be in HQ 1 or 2 days a week, as opposed to 5. And as we have seen, a well thought out workplace strategy will lead to happier, healthier, more productive employees, as well as providing the flexibility to scale up or down as needs be. That is so very clearly required by companies today. So what are your options? You could de-densify, taking more space for each person in the office. I'm pretty certain that is not what you will be doing. You could keep the same space you have now and accept very low space utilization. You could move to a smaller space, but spread out usage over the 5 days. You could timeshare an office with someone else, where you only occupy on certain days of the week. You could move to a private office with a flex operator that allowed you to spill over into shared spaces as required. Or you could work up a hub, home, roam strategy, where you keep a smaller, but most likely much better central HQ, which employees visit sparingly, whilst also working from a home or near home or wherever, by taking out membership with one or more network flex operator. The key takeaway is focusing on less but better, more flexible space. So how do you make this upheaval work in your favor? Well, first off, the most essential technology you must employ is to survey your employees. You need to ask everyone how things worked for them before the pandemic started. What was their commute? What percentage of their time did they spend in the office? And what did they do when they were there? Meetings, desk work, presentations, what? Then you need to find out how working from home has been for them. What has worked well? What has not? What do they need? How do they score the overall experience? Finally, you need to ask them what they would want after the pandemic. How many days would they want to be in the office or home or elsewhere? What type of spaces and equipment would they need? From all of this data, you can then work out what space you really require, what equipment you need to procure, physical and digital, and also what corporate policies you need to implement around schedules, meetings, and documentation. All of this will be an iterative process. So generally speaking, take your time, collect data, and take care in analyzing it. A distributed company is a different animal to an office-centric company. Almost certainly better for everyone involved if you get it right. And technology is at the heart of everything. First off, you need to ensure the environmental conditions in your building are being monitored in real time and systems optimized accordingly. How much air is being recirculated? You need to know. You need to aim for as much touchless technology as possible. Building entry, lift operation, doors, taps, meeting room booking and control, and so on. Materials used within the workplace need to be antimicrobial wherever possible. Cleaning needs to be regular and preferably automated. But the most important technology for the workplace of the future is that which allows you to understand the wants, needs, and desires of each and every employee, and that provides you with quantitative and qualitative data about how well your real estate strategy is enabling them to be as healthy, happy, and productive as they can be. That's the aim. Making it happen requires humans and machines to work together. You'll never win unless you can do that, as all the smart people in PropTech realize. Now, all of this represents a significant change in the nature of demand within the office sector. And of course, whenever such things happen, there are winners and losers. Perhaps the biggest winner is the customer. something of a first for the real estate industry. By rethinking how much space they need, where they need it, and how they are going to use it, companies should be able to win on two fronts. They should be able to utilize the space they do occupy more efficiently and effectively, whilst at the same time providing better, more flexible arrangements for their employees, who in turn should be more productive and more satisfied with their workplace options. The landlords who win from this new world are those that can provide flexibility to their customers, that have a network of spaces to offer, and who put together an ecosystem of suppliers that enables them to satisfy more of their customers' needs. The big losers will be those who cannot provide any of this, and there will be many that cannot. The key point is that a landlord needs to be able to offer customers optionality. It will be very bad news if you cannot offer optionality. Creating this optionality will require PropTech solutions up and down the value chain. And we are talking about all of this being required over the next 12 to 18 months. Without the forcing function of coronavirus, this would have been a decade-long process. A good example of optionality in practice can be seen in the hub on Causeway, a development by Boston Properties. It will contain long-term office space, short-term space, flex space, hotel amenities, and residential units, amongst other things. Real estate asset classes are morphing. This talk may be focused on the office market, but truth be told, what is an office today? Right now, it's probably your home. This time is different. Everything really is changing. What people want in the future, no, scrap that. What people demand in the future will not be what they wanted in the past. They are living through a truly global event. They are seeing how what happens in one part of the world can impact on another. In many parts of the world, people have experienced environmental conditions unlike anything they have experienced before. For the first time in many decades, people in northern India have been able to see the Himalayas from 200 kilometers away. Many of us who live in cities have breathed clean air for the first time in a long time. All of this is giving us a better understanding of how we, the human race, affect the world around us, and how a more sustainable world is both possible and a requirement. Hence, the great PropTech flywheel. Our built environment needs to be safe and healthy for people to work, rest, and play in. But to make it such, we need to embrace a broad, deep, and pervasive notion of sustainability. The imperative and the opportunity for PropTech in this situation is therefore immense. Very short term, it no doubt feels to many more like a heart attack. But once the immediate dust settles, you will see the technology in real estate landscape has been utterly transformed. We are all aware that throughout the built environment, from design to finance, construction, operation, onto sale or lease, the use of technology to remove friction and to enable discovery is mostly suboptimal. We do not do much in real estate very efficiently or very effectively. We waste energy. We generate horrendous amounts of carbon. We don't collect much data, and that we do collect is often not put to much use. The critical point, though, is that we know how to do almost everything better. We could dramatically improve the performance of the industry. We have the tools, the capabilities, and the technologies we need to do so. Not at scale, but around the globe, there are solutions to most of the known nodes of inefficiency and waste. To date, the issue has been incentives. As a whole, the industry has not had the incentives to bother to put to use all the tools in our toolbox. 10 years into a real estate bull market is no time for innovation. It's just not needed. It's not even a criticism. Business people have been optimizing their businesses very successfully for the world as it has been. Today, All of this is out of the window. Our commercial assets are largely empty. In many instances, this might be the case for a while. But worse than that, our customers are not going to return until we can prove to them that they are safe and healthy places to be. They are now acutely aware of the dangers of the environmental conditions around them, of the importance of good hygiene and cleanliness, of the very air they breathe. Now, landlords in historic market conditions, market downturns, always pull out the same playbook: reduce overheads, cut capex, minimize expenditure, hunker down, survive. But that won't work this time. That won't work this time. This time is different. The lack of demand is not a cyclical market issue. It is an existential health and safety one. Plus, as we have seen, the chain link in work and the office is gone. You will not be able to cut your costs to get through this. This time, the only way through the crisis will be by spending money. On upgrades to ventilation systems, on new materials, on new hardware, on new fittings and furnishings, on new cleaning regimes, on new cleaning processes, on communication, on data, on analytics, on interactions with customers, on increased staffing, on new business models, and new ideas about what constitutes the office and even work itself. In a sentence, everything we know we should have done over the last 10 years but have not had to, we need to do now. That better built environment we so often talked about, well, now is the time to build it. But beyond this, we really need to ensure it happens, to not waste this serious crisis. In the same way as there are calls to not bail out or prop out incumbent companies in industries fundamentally incompatible with a low carbon future, we could take this enforced opportunity to mandate the same within real estate. No more investment in anything that does not fit with a low carbon built environment. We must design digitally end to end, construct using MMC, modern methods of construction, operate buildings with a zero tolerance to waste, plow investment into replacements for high carbon steel and concrete, connect our assets to the cloud and one another, and use the resultant data to create and curate better spaces and places. Demonstrate to our customers that our buildings will look after you and the planet. We have an opportunity within the PropTech community to push hard for the adoption of new and developing technologies. Computation and generative design, digital twins, virtual and augmented reality, smart materials such as solar glass and graphene, drone use, micromobility, and autonomous vehicles. All of these are going to help bring construction and real estate storming back to modernity. All of these are needed to build back better. All are ready for serious investment. All are looking at, if not an open door, then one that is at least ajar. We need to be rethinking what it means to be a real estate company. What are the components that will enable us to be more than the providers of dumb boxes? At the moment, within the office sector, it takes 6 different skills to create a great workplace. But at the moment, they might as well be 6 different industries for all that they talk together and collaborate. But the real estate company of the future will be a mashup of all these capabilities. The future real estate company will have all the real estate skills the best have today, but will also be highly skilled in IoT and networks and data analytics. And then on top of this, they will possess workplace, HR, and hospitality skills. And they will use all of these skills to create and then curate great user experiences for their customers. And they will be built on real-time data. The future real estate company will have a granular and deep understanding of how their buildings perform. They will constantly monitor and optimize the environmental conditions within their buildings. They will understand exactly how people are using their buildings. What is the occupancy, utilization, footfall in each area? And what are their customers' jobs to be done? What are their wants, needs, and desires? How well does the form factor of the office match these? And the industry will start to think of the workplace as software. As anyone involved in tech knows, build, measure, learn is how products and services develop. You build something, you get it into the hands of a customer, you measure how well it works, and then you learn from that in order to start the process again. Build, measure, learn. Build, measure, learn. Historically in real estate, we have stopped at build. This will change. Frankly, we have no choice in this now. Assets are going to collapse in value towards complete obsolescence unless the users of those assets' fears are assuaged. The surest route to value destruction will be to assume this is a passing event and normality will return. That fits in the same bucket as thinking these months will not increase the number of people who will become comfortable with remote working. To compound the problems around our customers being fearful of entering our assets, the pandemic is demonstrating that work and the office are not joined at the hip. We were already heading to a world where we had to persuade people that they needed our product anyway. Tomorrow, that argument needs to be stronger and richer. For the PropTech industry, this really is the silver lining to a very dark cloud. PropTech companies need to focus on their value propositions, which ideally will be around increasing or enabling greater sustainability, health and well-being, directly or indirectly. They need to demonstrate deep understanding of how their hardware, software or services can fit into the operational flow of their customers' businesses. And they need to work as partners, not just vendors, whenever possible. Co-creation will be at the heart of the modern real estate company. What is happening globally today has never been experienced before. We will get through it, probably in a relatively short time. But pandemics will return, and climate change offers up the probability that other stop-the-world events are more likely. Unless we orientate ourselves towards a deep focus on creating a sustainable, safe and healthy planet, we will be in real danger. Real estate has to sit at the heart of it, so let's not fail to grab an extraordinary opportunity. There is no solution to the problems of the real estate industry that does not involve tech. And because of the coronavirus, none of these problems can be ignored anymore. It has unleashed a great flywheel. PropTech's time has come. It's now over to you. Thank you.